to Watch is an intimate look into the lives of prominent and influential women leaders from around the world and the challenges they faced on their journey. It's the real story behind her title. Join us every week to hear more stories about women from around the world and in your own communities at womentowatch.net. Hi, everyone, and welcome back to another week of Women to Watch. I'm Sue Rocco. Thanks so much for being with me this week. Joining me in just a moment will be Erin Krolikiewicz, and Erin is the Global Head of Talent for Novartis Pharmaceuticals. Don't forget, as always, to stay with us during the breaks, where you'll hear from our exclusive watch team of corporate partners, bringing you news and information from their industries. And we'd love for you to follow us on our YouTube page at Women to Watch Media. That's W, the number 2, W Media. And now it's my pleasure to welcome to the show, Erin Krolikiewicz. Hi, Erin.
Thank you for having me. It's nice to talk with you.
Erin, I'd love to start off the interview with you describing a little bit for our viewers about the neighborhood that you grew up in Southern California.
Sure. So I grew up east of Los Angeles in a town called Mira Loma, California, which is a very small farming community. And so it was, back then just a small community where people were migrating from the city into a more urban setting. And we had a very, very humble upbringing, I would say, when it comes to the way that I grew up.
Erin, you shared with me that you grew up in a blue-collar family, and sometimes people look at that as a positive experience, and others sometimes find it difficult because they spend time with people that have more. And I was curious whether or how that impacted you.
Well, I feel very privileged with the way that I grew up. I think that I got to witness people working very hard and building great work ethic. We never felt the scarcity that may have been there because we worked together as a community and we had great support and just an awesome opportunity to continue to build. So I don't ever take it as a negative effect in my life. I think it's something that built the roots for who I am today.
I know that you and your sister were the very first in your family to go to college, and I was wondering if that felt like pressure to you to be successful, or was it more exciting to be the first?
I didn't feel any pressure. I think if there was any pressure, it was just self-driven for myself. My sister and I are both, we're just super ambitious, I think, by nature. And we actually moved together to San Diego to go to university. So we were roommates when we went to college together. So she is a couple years older than I am, but still she set the role model and foundation for me. And we took a big step and left home, moved together and just built our lives outside of where we grew up, which was really exciting. But no, I didn't feel pressure. I just felt like this is what I really was aiming to achieve and was able to make that happen.
When you look back when you were young, what's your earliest memory of what you wanted to be when you grew up?
That's a really great, that's a really great question. My mother, after spending a few years as a stay-at-home mom, went back to school at night to get some trade skills in accounting so that she could go back to work. And she would come home and bring office supplies to the house, paper, and we had a typewriter and things like this. And my cousin and I would play office together. So I really had the aspiration of, for some reason, I loved this office environment and doing these, little skits with my cousin. So I think that it started really young. I never had any intention of being anything beyond just successful, but working in that kind of space. Yeah.
You described yourself to me as being somewhat of an introvert. And I know that when you were younger, some teachers recognized that in you and they stepped in and became mentors. Can you talk a little bit about that for us?
Absolutely. So I was the quieter person in the classroom, just more of a, I guess, a lone wolf type in some ways. I wasn't an athlete, and I certainly was trying to be a scholar, but wasn't always necessarily in that space. but I did have a very strong connection, especially to the women leaders that were my teachers. And in high school, I had two incredible teachers that really took me under their wing and they're still my mentors to this day. They're still with me, thank goodness, and still a very big part of my life. But I would spend the lunchtime in their rooms as their teacher aides and just helping them organize things and kind of still in this business office sense of just putting things together and helping them with their day. So it was a really special time for me.
You also shared with me that you're somewhat of an old soul. And I wondered, when did you recognize that in yourself, that perhaps you were thinking of things that were different from your peers?
Well, my sister and I, we grew up pretty independent. Our parents both worked full time, so we were on our own a lot, latchkey kids. And I really took to just people who were older than me and that had some life experience. I think this is why even in high school I struggled a little bit socially, is because I always was looking ahead and just really interested in what the future could hold. And I really have just always learned so much from people that have had these life experiences. So that's where I think maybe an old soul type introvert style for me is, somebody who's really reflective, but just looking for people where there's deeper connection. And that's where I've just been able to really find my space when it comes to my personal and professional life.
The work that you do is very public and face forward when you work with your clients. And we talk often on the show about the fact that executive coaches, perhaps they teach what they need to learn. And I was wondering if you have found that to be the case for you.
Yes, and where I'm really fortunate is that I do have a public forum where I can also leverage that forum to engage privately or make a deeper connection through coaching or even through the talent work I do for Novartis. So while I'm able to activate and talk with people externally in a larger space, the connection for me really comes from those intimate moments when we're together and really getting into what's meaningful for people and how they're looking to move forward in their life.
What was your first job out of school?
My first job, I was a candy striper in a hospital. I was a volunteer. And then shortly after that, I became the hotel operator for a five-star hotel near my hometown.
I know that you have degrees from San Diego, Cornell, University of Washington, Rutgers. Are there any other degrees in your future?
Well, definitely will continue moving forward with certifications and degrees throughout my life. I think this is really one of the greatest benefits of us being able to do things remotely or virtually is that you can keep learning. And, for me, the curiosity element, I don't think will ever be quelled. I think that I'll always want to learn something. I hope to start learning more in the arts or something else beyond business. But right now, this is where my passion is to keep building my business acumen.
So, Erin, I was wondering how much work has changed for you post COVID. So, over the past couple of years, working for a big pharmaceutical, what's the first thing that comes to mind for you that has been such a drastic change, I would say?
Well, I think the first thing which happened immediately was the fact that we could expand beyond where we were working. So for me, that meant that I was able to move into a role that was not only US based, but also global. And I had a global team. And this was really an awesome opportunity to work across the world with people that are, aiming to get medicine to patients, especially during a time like a pandemic. So that's really the biggest thing I think that opened up for all of us is that we were able to now get broader and deeper in relationships, even if it was virtually.
And is that because so many people were now working from home virtually?
Yeah, we were all working from home, but it also opened up how do we work more effectively as teams across time zones and regions and countries to really deliver impact. So this was, a really great learning for me. I had never really done that in such a robust way.
When you're so as the global head of talent, you're building the workforce, for the company. And how has that the people that you're looking to recruit, are you seeing here the question, are you seeing women that are perhaps in a second act coming back to the workforce? Or is that a demographic that you're hiring?
Yes. So my specific area is one where I do the hiring for the executive leadership for our organization.
Mhm.
So a part of our workforce for sure. Um, so I don't have an opportunity in my work life to see people coming back from a second act because they're usually working in a continuous process at this stage of their career. However, in the coaching space that I also work in, I do see it. And as part of the coaching community and women's organizations that I belong to, absolutely, I see this happening.
Yeah. We're going to go into our first break. And when we come back, actually want to dive in and talk to you a little bit more about the coaching work that you do.
Great.
Stay with us for our watch team and we'll be right back.
We are CHOP, and we can't wait to show you around. We're the nation's first children's hospital. Now, a care network with more than 50 locations that continues to expand. 3 state-of-the-art research buildings with 1.5 million square feet of space. We have grown from 12 beds 165 years ago to nearly 600 beds and one of the best children's hospitals in the world. We have a level 1 trauma center, 11 floors of patient units, more than 20 operating rooms, first of its kind delivery unit for babies with birth defects, a separate cardiac operative and catheterization suite, and places to learn, like our internationally recognized simulation center. We have trained generations of leaders in the field of pediatrics. We are world leaders in medicine, surgery, and science. One of the top recipients in NIH funding for pediatric research. In this building, pioneers in CAR T therapy, mitochondrial disease, brain tumors, hyperinsulinism, and other rare diseases. Here, groundbreaking work in fetal surgery, genetics and genomics, and neurology. In our newest building, leaders in social determinants of health, clinical informatics and epidemiology, autism, trauma and injury prevention. Our patients come from every state and 115 countries. Meeting these challenges requires the best and the brightest. We are passionate about pediatrics. We are motivated to make a difference in the world and in our community. We are a team. We are CHOP.
Welcome back to the show. I'm speaking this week with Erin Krolikiewicz, and Erin is the Global Head of Talent for Novartis Pharmaceuticals. And I wanted to dive in this segment, Erin, and talk about your leadership coaching work. And the first thing I wanted to talk to you about, something that you do very purposefully is lead from a heart-centered place.
Yes.
And I'd love for you to describe for the viewers, what does that mean to you? What is that?
Yeah. So I think, working in human resources, we have such an incredible opportunity to reach people. And sometimes we lose sight of the human aspect when it comes to what we're actually doing from a process standpoint. For me, the reason I love working in human resources is because of the people and the engagement and really getting back to that core piece. We're helping people. We're here to support people. Of course, in line with a business strategy, but we have such a great role in the fact that we do get to interact and develop leaders. So that's what I mean with leading from the heart. Where do we really start with people's passion, where they're inspired and engaged, and then build on that?
Well, Erin, what do you think is one of the greatest obstacles for people, both men and women, that keeps them from reaching their full potential?
I really believe it's trying to find work-life balance. I don't think that there is such a thing as work-life balance. I think you have to integrate your life, and there's a tremendous amount of pressure on people to find that balance, whether they have children or they're caretakers for their family in some other way. It's tricky to find a way to make space for yourself to continue to grow and develop too.
And do you see differences between the women that you work with and the men that you work with in how open and receptive they are to your heart centered type of leadership advice?
I find that both men and women equally appreciate the approach and the safe space to be vulnerable and authentic. I don't see any difference between the way that they receive it. I definitely see a difference in the way that they are managing some of the ways that we're working through some of the challenges that they have. But yeah, I don't see a difference in their receiving the way that I present myself.
When you mention work life balance, I think we're talking so much more today about the reality of having to work and be a parent or another family member, but just our personal life, and how do we integrate that into our work life. And I think it's so much better the fact that we're talking about it. um, would you say it has gotten better in the corporate setting where companies are paying attention to the needs of their employees when it comes to what perhaps is going on outside of the office for them, and how can they be more supportive and provide resources?
That's a really great question. And Sue, I honestly think that there's a bigger situation that puts pressure on people now beyond a company or an industry. And that's the fact that culturally we've moved away from having a community approach to helping each other. So there's a lot of pressure on families and on people and even in relationships and so on to be the focal point constantly and not have maybe some relief from the outside. So I don't think that's a sole responsibility of a company, but I do feel that companies are really trying hard to address the situation and provide as much support and agility as possible so that people can be successful in their personal and work life. I know at Novartis, this is something that is very essential to our values as a company, is to ensure that we have, the space for people to be able to feel like they can take care of their personal and work life.
Do you feel or do you see that young people are paying more attention to this, the younger generation, than the older generation?
I haven't had a chance to see it as much personally, but I do read a lot about where the newer generations are choosing not to have children or maybe working in a different way, so that they can not have as much pressure as perhaps what they've grown up with their parents or seeing their grandparents a certain way. So I do think that they're making more choices and also looking for opportunities that are less about hierarchical or career growth, but maybe more impactful choices for their careers.
Mm. Erin, you shared with me, candidly, that one of your greatest challenges in life has been your own divorce and having to raise two boys.
Yep.
Um, First of all, I want to ask you if you have, this might not be the right question, but kind of forgiven yourself for going through that or moved past that disappointment.
I think this is something that I'll always look into every single day, because you certainly don't enter a relationship like that expecting that it won't work out. However, I feel like my former husband and I do a very, very good job of co-parenting and working together as a team. And this is where maybe I can forgive myself a little bit, because I have been able to put so much effort into continuing a very thoughtful relationship with him for our boys. Our boys deserve to have the best, life ahead of them. And that means two parents that had some discord working together to make sure that they get that.
Yeah, that takes a lot of emotional strength, fortitude. I think it's obviously the right thing to do for the boys. Um, When you look at, how old are they, your
My
sons?
boys are 12 and 14.
Okay, wow, they're going through it.
Yeah.
12 and 14
Yes.
in today's world with
Yeah.
social media and all the nonsense. Um, can I ask you, what do you worry about most for them when you think about them growing up today and perhaps their futures? What worries you the most?
I think you brought up social media. This is it worries me just how vulnerable our younger generation is when it comes to the mental and emotional state because of social media. I do worry about drugs. I have to say I have that core, where it's so feels like it's so easily around, in certain areas. So we have a lot of deep conversations around that. But also, I think pressure, and this is something I don't want them to feel pressured by what my expectations are of them. And I've talked about this very openly. My aim for them is really just to find happiness and fulfillment in their lives. And that's something that both their father and I are very supportive with them about.
Um, Tell me, do you have, when we talk about dealing with life today, because it is hard, there's a lot that comes at us, and I know that you very much look for inspiration in your life and in the world. Do you have a favorite quote?
My favorite quote is, "You didn't come this far just to come this far." And so that's a really uplifting quote for me because sometimes we all have hard days. We all have those days where we're just like, gosh, it just doesn't feel like anything's working out. And so that quote just helps me remember you have another opportunity tomorrow or even in the next hour. So just stick with it.
And how about a favorite book? Is there something you're currently reading or that you have read that really has filled you with hope and inspiration?
Yeah, I mean, I have a lot of different genres of books that I read. I'm very much reading a lot of coaching books right now. Actually, I'm reading the Love Yourself into Life Book of Magic, which was referred by a gentleman named Jim Curtis, who's an executive coach that I follow. Um, but I can't, I think just reading cross culturally and in different genres has helped always keep my mind open to different things. And yeah, I don't really have a favorite. Lots of
Yeah, there's
different.
so many,
Yeah,
right? There's
yeah,
so many, and we can get our inspiration, for all the negatives of social media. There's a lot of really wise people out there, I think, that share the reminders that we need, and the books as well, and podcasts.
so many. Yes,
So many.
big Esther Perel follower. I love watching her podcast and listening to her.
Yeah. How about a goal for yourself, professionally? Is there something that you're working towards?
I have a couple of goals. One of them is to eventually move overseas so that I can experience the international culture in its own setting versus, working remotely as I am now. And another is really to have a role ultimately in the future that really combines my expertise and professional background and talent, which I've worked across many different spectrums, but also with coaching. So I think that there's a really great interface between the two. So how do you find leaders, bring them into an organization, and then develop them into, reaching all of their goals that they have set forward? So that would be really a great opportunity that I would look forward to.
Yeah. Um, you're really an expert in people. You have met people from all over the world, and really, your conversations are usually, I'm guessing, a deep dive. You're
Mhm.
looking to bring them on. What have you recognized, about people in general, that has surprised you as we look at the world where we are today? Is there anything that comes to mind that you think, gosh, and it could be a positive or a
Yeah.
negative, but
I would say, when I talk with people, it's really important for me to also understand what I call the softer side, which is not just going into, interview questions or talking about their roles and experiences. Those things are really important. But I also want to hear about their life and what helped them become, impactful or successful in their life. What's been motivating to them, like just really getting to understand them as a person. And I have to say, I have what's surprising, maybe it sounds negative for me, but what's surprising is I've never been disappointed. When people tell me about their life experience and they tell me about what's moved them and why they keep moving forward or why they feel successful in a certain way, I think it's just always so special and unique to that individual. And so that has been really surprising. Like we're really all cut from a different cloth.
Correct. But there's a human commonality.
Absolutely. There's this need and desire for connection, sometimes deeper than others, but people just want to be seen and heard.
Yeah. My last question, the women that watch this show are often here looking for some inspiration and for their next act, or they've just launched a new business, they're writing a new book. What would you leave them with to leave them hopeful?
I would say, really invest in your network, invest in people that you feel that you can build a rapport with and that you can, have a community with. This is where I see a lot through coaching women where they're missing that community, they're missing that network. And even if it's something that's personal, to have somebody you trust and that you can go to and then build on that. Who do they know? Who do they know? And this is where when you're a professional and you're needing to say, how do I frame this book? How do I work on this project? There's always going to be somebody that's willing to help you. So just believe in that.
Yeah, yeah. Great advice. Great advice. Well, Erin, I thank you so much for taking time out of your busy day to share a little bit about your own life story. And I wish you continued success.
Thank you so much.
Stay with us as we go into our last break. You'll hear from our watch team, and I'll be back to close out the show.
From Philadelphia to the Lehigh Valley and everywhere in between. For 150 years, Penn Community Bank has been a part of your neighborhood. Helping businesses start, supporting families as they grow, and staying connected to the people and places that make this region special. It's who we are and where we're from. Penn Community Bank. Here we are, and here we grow.
We are CHOP, and we can't wait to show you around. We're the nation's first children's hospital. Now, a care network with more than 50 locations that continues to expand. 3 state-of-the-art research buildings with 1.5 million square feet of space. We have grown from 12 beds 165 years ago to nearly 600 beds and one of the best children's hospitals in the world. We have a level 1 trauma center, 11 floors of patient units, more than 20 operating rooms, first of its kind delivery unit for babies with birth defects, a separate cardiac operative and catheterization suite, and places to learn, like our internationally recognized simulation center. We have trained generations of leaders in the field of pediatrics. We are world leaders in medicine, surgery, and science. One of the top recipients in NIH funding for pediatric research. In this building, pioneers in CAR T therapy, mitochondrial disease, brain tumors, hyperinsulinism, and other rare diseases. Here, groundbreaking work in fetal surgery, genetics and genomics, and neurology. In our newest building, leaders in social determinants of health, clinical informatics and epidemiology, autism, trauma and injury prevention. Our patients come from every state and 115 countries. Meeting these challenges requires the best and the brightest. We are passionate about pediatrics. We are motivated to make a difference in the world and in our community. we are a team. We are CHOP.
That's it, everyone, for another week of Women to Watch. Thanks so much for joining me. Stay tuned for my interview next week with Megan Pierce. Megan is the CEO of the Forum for Executive Women here in Philadelphia. And thanks so much, as always, to our sponsors and our Watch team for their contributions each and every week. Have a great week, everyone.